You know that classic 80s movie, The Breakfast Club? Yeah, you probably remember the awesome soundtrack, the stereotypes, but what if I told you that Saturday Detention was actually more than just a movie plot? What if it was this perfect, accidental experiment in group psychology, one that reveals something really deep about how we all interact with each other? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dig into today. Yeah, we're going to break down how five total strangers stuck in a library can actually teach us some incredibly deep lessons about emotional intelligence. And, maybe more importantly, about the hidden roles we all end up playing in our own lives. At work, with our friends, even with family. It really all boils down to one question, doesn't it? How do we stop being just a label and start being our true, authentic selves? Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we'll look at that Saturday in detention. Then, we'll see how they went from labels to a real system. We'll get into the five hidden roles, find that big breakthrough moment, and then, of course, figure out what all this means for you. All right, let's set the scene. You've got five high schoolers, and each one is a total stereotype, right? The brain, the athlete, the basket case, the princess, and the criminal. And they're all stuck together for a whole Saturday. At first, they're basically enemies. They're using those labels like armor just to keep everyone else away. But then, over just a few hours, something pretty incredible starts to happen. They go from being this collection of hostile, separate people into a real, functioning group. And here's the thing, it wasn't an accident. It actually followed a very predictable three-step journey that all groups kind of go through. And you can see it play out so clearly. They kick things off in phase one, high resistance, where everyone is just clinging to their stereotype for dear life. Then things get, well, messy. That's phase two, conflict or storming. But then they finally get to phase three, authentic integration. And that's where the real connection, the real magic starts to happen. So how did they make that jump? To really get it, we have to look past those simple labels. See, each character wasn't just a jock or a princess. They were actually playing a hidden role, a necessary part that helped the whole group deal with its anxiety and actually move forward. Okay, first up, John Bender. He's not just the criminal, he's the instigator. You could almost call him the heat seeker. His whole job, really, is to provoke people, to push all the buttons, and to force everyone out of their polite, safe little bubbles. He's literally the engine driving the whole emotional arc of the day. You know that person in a work meeting who asks the one question everyone's thinking but is too scared to say? That's Bender. And then there's Claire, the princess. She starts out as the defender of the status quo. She's all about keeping that social hierarchy intact. But her role changes. She evolves into the mediator. She's the one who starts bridging the gaps between people, especially when she helps Allison come out of her shell. She's that person who sees the quiet one in the corner and actually makes space for them to talk. Brian, the brain, is pretty clearly the rule enforcer. He is laser focused on the one task they were given, that 1,000-word essay. He's basically carrying all the group's anxiety about failing, and he's constantly trying to pull everyone back from chaos and get them focused. He's the guy who wants to follow the rules while everyone else is trying to break them. Come on, we've all had that person in a group project, right? Next is Allison, the basket case. She's playing a role called the hungry ghost. At the beginning, she's almost invisible, right? She uses silence and all this weird behavior to signal that she's desperate for a connection. But that silence is actually super powerful. She's kind of like a sonographer, just quietly watching and taking in all the unspoken stuff, all the group's hidden truths, before she finally decides to speak. And last but not least, Andrew, the jock. He's the hero, but he's totally trapped by this constant pressure to be the strong one, the tough guy. His whole journey in this movie is realizing that this hero persona has actually made him act like a bully, all to please his dad. His big breakthrough is when he finally admits he's ashamed of himself, showing a kind of vulnerability he was taught to hide his whole life. So, you've got all these different roles bumping up against each other. How in the world did they finally connect? Well, it all came down to one single critical moment, a moment where the entire power dynamic in that library just shifted. And all those walls they built up came crashing down. Just think about that power shift for a second. Before, power was all about your label, right? Where you fit in the high school food chain. It was all about defense. But after this moment, power came from somewhere totally different. It came from sharing secrets, from being vulnerable, from actually being real with each other.
And here it is, the big turning point. It wasn't some huge fight or dramatic argument. It was this quiet realization that every single one of them was a prisoner of the exact same thing, the insane pressure from their parents. The pressure to be the princess, the jock, the brain, they were all in the same boat. And that shared vulnerability, that's the bedrock of real connection.
So, okay, this is way more than just analyzing a cool movie. It's basically a blueprint for understanding all the groups in our own lives. It shows us a path for how we can get past the surface level roles that people give us, or let's be honest, the ones we put on ourselves. And this quote, this really hits the nail on the head. Real, authentic connection, it takes risk, it takes guts. You have to have the courage to be vulnerable, to share something real about yourself, and risk being misunderstood. Because it's right there, in that scary, risky space, that the real magic actually happens. When you get right down to it, those 5 kids in detention weren't really a criminal, an athlete, a basket case, a princess, and a brain. They had to drop those labels, almost like shedding an old skin, to finally see each other for who they really were underneath. Just complex, magnificent people. You know, just like us.
So, I want to leave you with a question to chew on. Think about the groups you're in, your team at work, your circle of friends, your family. What role do you usually play? Are you the one who stirs the pot, the one who makes peace, the one who keeps everyone on track? And maybe the bigger question is, what would it take for your group to have its own breakthrough?